All right, we're back for the fourth episode here. Ben Barton,
Riley Eager,
and we're lucky enough to have our head of product here today.
Roger Maranan.
As always.
the cheers.
Now, Roger, I was looking through your LinkedIn because I was trying to figure out where I could find the easiest chronology of what you've been up to.
Mm-hmm.
And LinkedIn seemed to be the most effective. But one of the things that I hadn't read before that I read was your post about why you came to Paperless Parts.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was really cool. And I was reading it, and it was funny enough that you were like, I need teammates, and I need a design guy, right? And so I think it was, I don't know what the dates were, but I'm sure Nick came very shortly after that, right? What I also didn't know is that you had design experience. You went to this startup institute to work as like a...
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. So I graduated from college with a mechanical engineering degree, and I knew I wanted to get into tech and build products. Like when I reflected back on what I learned at BU, what I realized was I really like building things for people and solving problems. But I didn't have the skill sets, I thought, at that time to go right into a startup. And so I did this thing that's called Boston Startup School at that point. Now I think it's known as Startup Institute. And it was like an 8-week crash course on product design, design thinking, UX, all that. And so, with that background, I was able to make my way ultimately to Paperless.
And that was right after BU?
Yeah.
And so you did mechanical engineering at BU?
Yeah.
And the design element of engineering is what caught you? Like how did design really?
Yeah, I guess what I've always liked making art. I've always on the side, like that's a thing I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't even know.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I can show some stuff.
Yeah, please do.
So I've always had that inclination, but I never really understood like how you could turn that into a job other than being an artist. And then I started learning about UX design while I was in school. I started taking technology classes outside of the engineering department, and that's when my eyes opened up to ultimately design is just problem solving. And so that's what really interested me more so than I can do all the calculations and engineering that was required of us at school, but where I found I really excelled was looking at problems, figuring out what people needed to do, what we needed to fix to make something meaningful.
Was there a lot of manufacturing stuff you did in school, or was that kind of still a new space?
I'd say I think I know my way around CAD, and we had machine design classes where we had to figure out if we're building this machine, what components are we actually using to put this together, and we would design that. And ultimately, I built. We never built the actual thing, but we had to design a project where we would harvest trays of plants that were being harvested for medical use that was going to go to one of the biomedical companies around the Boston area. And so all the different student groups had these projects to design what this harvester machine will look like. So that was my first foray into figuring out, all right, if we were going to make this thing, what kind of components do we have to, what kind of components do we have to order? Everything from the motor that you're going to use for the belt that's going to bring the tray through to what pieces of hardware we're going to use to fasten everything together. So I think that was kind of the extent of my foray into thinking about the engineering side of it. I'd say on the manufacturing side, it's something that more so in my career I've learned through my time with additive companies and here at Paperless.
It's kind of that synergy, right? Because you bring to the office a very obvious, especially with you and Nick as the 1-2 punch, but a very obvious understanding of the relationship between product and design. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I'm really interested in, right? Because you did this. You had the mechanical engineering background, and then you did the startup institute. And then you went on to a couple other companies, right? And how did that? Because you like art outside of office
so
as well. I'm very interested how those two came together.
Yeah, I think in the space that we're in, there's a lot of thought that goes into the software that everyone's using. Everything from the CAD tools to ERP systems. There's a lot of functionality that's built into these things that solve problems. But I think where I really enjoy what we do is when we bridge that gap of not just what's the problem and what's the obvious answer to that problem, but how do we do that in an elegant manner that makes sense for the people that we're building software for. And I think that's where, when we build things, that's why we try to make sure we get feedback on what people are trying to do. And when we make designs on something, that we get the input from our users before we build these things so that we can understand, are we really solving the right problems? And I think that's where having the context for what our customers are doing on the floor or in the shop when they're quoting, being able to converse in what their problems are, and bridging that with what we do here to build good software through good design, good user experience. I think that's where it really works, and I think that's why our customers like what we do. We're not just saying, all right, here's that exact button you asked for. It's we're trying to understand what's that deep problem you're really maybe not speaking to that we need to solve. And
I think so that our customers know one of the things that you craft really well is a narrative, right? Like any question about a feature in the product, it's usually like, okay, well, here's the story, here's the user story, right? This is the exact instance that they're going to be using it, and it's not just this exact instance; it's the several before and after, right?
Like I think it's very easy in kind of traditional software development where you talk about requirements. It's like, what's their requirement for this product, or what's the customer's requirement? I think where I like to frame it, and kind of what I've learned over the years, that there is a user story behind that use case. Like kind of the framework that we'll use is, as a user, I want to achieve this thing so that I can accomplish this, or so that I can have a certain outcome. And I think when you frame things that way, it's not so much about building a solution as it is to enable the customer, the user, to do what they need to do. And that's where, what in my job, I'm collaborating with the whole team to figure out how we build something. I don't want to be the one prescribing this is the exact solution. And framing it as a user story, I think you're able to get the creativity out of everyone to say, oh, if that's the user story, we could solve that in these different ways to fulfill that goal for the end user.
Tell us about the first place you started out as post the startup incubator. What role did you go into?
So
what was that first couple months like?
I was a junior product manager at that point for a company called GrabCAD. So I really learned a lot in that role, where I grew from being kind of I joked, like I was like the product janitor, just cleaning up all the little bits here and there, but slowly grew to own the web experience for the platform we were building, and then grew to managing teams of product managers. So that's been an interesting lesson in figuring out how do you do the individual contributor role to figure out what do we need to build, how do we execute on that as a team, how do you communicate that clearly, all the way to, all right, how do you build a team of people that can actually execute on those things.
You obviously will never say this. I read that you awarded the CEO award, which is top 30 employees at a 3,000 person company, right? So and that must have had a lot of leadership responsibilities with it, right? So what was that like, becoming one of the go-to guys in a big company like that?
I guess I kind of come back to, like, that was a surprise for me, winning that award, where my focus was like, we had a new product that we had to ship, and I just wanted to make sure it was great and that everything around that product launch was going to work well. Everything from so it was really working with the whole team, the product team, the development team, the marketing and sales team, to just make sure everything was put together and we'd execute on it. So while it was hard to me, I think it was really a team effort. Like I helped like where there were gaps, but it was a cool way to be rewarded for an effort. It was a push to get it out.
You had a podcast for a little bit. Right?
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little about that. What year?
It was 2012, 2014.
So 2 years.
Yeah, a couple years. I think we hit over
Dento
100
and the
episodes.
Robot, right?
Yeah.
How many episodes?
Over 100.
Really? No way.
Well, it started off with me and my best friend from high school. We just started calling each other on Skype just to catch up, and then for whatever reason we started recording it. We were like, all right, let's do it. And so what we did was every week, as we would do it on Sundays, and as we would wrap up the week, we would just kind of reflect on what have we learned this week. So it was a way, like for me, some of it came across as like, professionally, here's what I learned. Like, man, I thought I was gonna get fired because I did this thing wrong, but turns out that was all in my head. Like I stressed out so much. So just like there were these lessons that we would have over the week that would just come out of that. But then as the show grew, we started having guests. Like this guy who made a Batman documentary was on our show. We had some authors on our show. So it kind of grew for a little while, but we didn't really know where to take it. But it was a cool exercise in just trying something creative outside of your day-to-day work.
Well, I mean, as well, I feel like our customer group, people we're helping, are just untapped by the way media and technology has just completely consumed the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's a great point about like we are in this point in technology where there's a generation that grew up very tech savvy, tech first, and then we, our most experienced machinists who are at these manufacturers might not be in that situation. So I think that's something we're very cognizant of when we build new features. We try to keep in mind like there are these different audiences and different levels of exposure to technology. We need to be aware of that and design for those cases.
That's so valid.
Yeah.
Not just dawning on me.
What? Yeah.
It's so like we're so used to like the smallest things of like type enter.
And we're gonna fix that with our upcoming. We have the changes already. It'll ship, but we'll have like a little send button so it's clear. But on the flip side, though, like I think one of the things that technology has done is given people new ways to express themselves. Where things like emojis and stickers, while they're a little goofy, they're also things that can make things like communication fun. And I think
I rip the thumbs up.
Dude, but again, they're inherently emotional, right? Like some of the facial expressions you can't really write in one word. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they encompass like a whole sentence or a whole thought or a whole reaction to an idea. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think that we can. I think there's that balance of making sure it's friendly enough, but also allow people to have that personality to come across in their work. And even with how we build our stuff and how we present our products, like we want it to be fun to use. We want it to be a delight to use, because that's the only way that we make good product that people care about
and keep coming back to and want to open up. What do you do outside of work?
Yes. So lately, I have been I work mostly, but I
we know.
No, I kind of mentioned in the last couple of years I started trying to paint again, like make art. Yeah. So when I'm not working, I'll usually be doing that or just kind of hanging out.
Are you doing like full paintings or small kind of?
Yeah, usually I found myself whenever I tried to start painting back in the past, small paintings I just get frustrated with because I was like I can't. Oh, really? I just never figured out, or maybe my technique just isn't great at this point for like small things. That I find myself more. It's a lot more freeing to paint like on a bigger, large canvas. But I mean, I'm not talking about like huge because I don't have space for that. But like I'll paint for something like this big. I can show you guys some of that.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that.
There's a whole different side of a cool place you like to go to every year.
Oh yeah.
Well, talk about cool engineering that's done.
That is very.
I actually got some stories about that. So I do go to Burning Man, and what got me out there was actually a project that I participated in very, very briefly, where we helped build I helped drill one hole in one of the sculptures that went out there.
Oh, really?
But one of my friends was building a sculpture they brought out to Burning Man one year, and got me and a bunch of our friends to go out there, and a few of us have been, like a core group of us have been going almost every year since.
What's the name of the
Camp No Name Yeti? Thanks to an autocorrect mishap or miracle.
Like
the iPhone, someone's iPhone autocorrected no name yet to No Name Yeti, and we're like, that's our name now.
Keep it.
Yeah. Coin it. But I mean, my favorite part of it is just the crazy art that people make, and the really cool part is it's actually a way a lot of people get into learning how to run CNC machines and how to weld things and how to cut things,
and they bring it out.
Because people do it by hand. They learn. You recruit people onto a project to build this out.
And someone has to adopt that skill.
And that's where in the Boston area, there's Artisans Asylum that gives you access to tools like everything from like CNC machines to lathes to 3D printers, and there's a part of that group that are burners who make things in that space. That's awesome. And it's just a cool way to spend your time, I guess.
Sounds yeah. That's the end of episode 4. Roger, thank you very much for coming on.
No problem.
Absolute pleasure. Riley, as always,